4 days before a family moved into their new home, someone wrote them a letter, addressed not to them, but to the house itself. In the spring of 2014, in a quiet New Jersey suburb we'll call Ashfield Hollow, the Merrow family closed on their dream home at 4 Weatherby Lane. Red brick, a wraparound porch, a finished basement with a single strange detail the home inspector noted but couldn't explain. A section of wall paneling that didn't quite match the rest, its edges worn smooth, as if it had been opened and closed more times than a storage panel ever should be. Nobody thought much of it. Not yet. Because within 2 weeks, a typed letter arrived, unsigned except for one word: Watcher. And it knew things about the family no stranger should have known. Who was the person writing to a house they no longer owned? And how long had they been watching it? Ashfield Hollow was the kind of town people moved to, not away from. Top-rated schools, low crime, a 2-hour commute to the city that families made willingly for the quiet. The house at 4 Weatherby Lane had sat on the market only 11 days before the Merrows made an offer. Fast, even for that street. David and Elaine Merrow had 3 children, ages 6, 9, and 14. They'd been renting for years, saving carefully, and the Weatherby Lane house felt like the reward for a decade of patience. The previous owner, an elderly widow named Constance Hale, had lived there alone for over 30 years before moving into an assisted living facility 2 towns over. The sale had gone smoothly. Mrs. Hale's son handled the paperwork on her behalf. She never appeared at the closing. The home inspection had flagged only minor issues: aging wiring, a cracked driveway, and that mismatched basement panel, dismissed in the report as a prior owner modification, cosmetic only. The Merrows spent their first weeks the way most families do, unpacking boxes, meeting neighbors, figuring out which cabinet the mugs belonged in. Elaine started a garden along the side fence. David converted a spare room into a home office. Their youngest, Sam, claimed the bedroom with the window facing the backyard, delighted that he could see all the way to the tree line. Their neighbors were friendly, if a little quiet on the subject of the Hale family. One woman, watering her lawn, mentioned that Mrs. Hale had rarely left the house in her later years, that the porch light stayed on every night, all night, for as long as anyone could remember. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was addressed to the new family at 4 Weatherby Lane. Typed, no return address, no postmark irregularities the post office could flag. It welcomed them to the neighborhood in polite, almost formal language. Then it asked a question that stopped Elaine cold in the driveway: whether Sam had chosen the room with the backyard view. They hadn't told anyone which child had which room. Not the movers, not the neighbors, not even extended family yet. Who already knew? David assumed it was a prank, maybe a nosy neighbor who'd glimpsed the moving-in process and guessed well. He didn't report it. But 12 days later, a second letter came, and this one didn't ask questions. It made observations. It described the new paint color in the living room, a change made only 4 days earlier. It referenced a family disagreement that had taken place with the windows closed. Elaine wanted to call the police immediately. David hesitated, worried about spooking the kids, worried about what neighbors would think. By the 4th letter, hesitation wasn't an option anymore. The letter contained something that changed the entire shape of the case. It included a hand-drawn floor plan of the basement, accurate down to the mismatched panel the inspector had flagged. Beneath the sketch, 6 words: "I made sure it still opens." The police were called that night. Investigators initially treated it as a stalking case, someone watching the house from outside, perhaps using a camera or a vantage point on the street. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, questioned the mail carrier, reviewed traffic patterns. But the level of interior detail in the letters didn't match anything visible from a car window or a neighboring yard. Whoever was writing these letters wasn't just watching the house. They had been inside it. The letters kept coming, roughly every 2 weeks, each one shorter and colder than the last. One referenced a nightmare Sam had described only to his mother at breakfast with the doors shut. Another simply read, "You don't lock the panel. You should." Elaine stopped letting the children play in the basement. David installed motion sensor lights around the exterior and had the locks changed twice. For a while, nothing happened, and the family let themselves believe the worst had passed. 3 weeks without a letter, the longest gap yet. They started sleeping again. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, while the house was empty, Elaine's neighbor watched a woman she didn't recognize walk calmly up the driveway, stand at the mismatched basement panel visible through the small window well, and press her palm flat against the glass for nearly a full minute before walking away, unhurried, down the street. She was elderly, silver-haired, dressed like she had somewhere else to be. The description matched no one on any suspect list detectives had built. It took another 6 weeks and a records request into the house's original 1974 construction permits before investigators understood what the panel actually was. It wasn't storage. It was the entrance to a narrow crawl space, barely 2 feet wide, that ran the length of the foundation and connected through a second concealed opening to the detached garage. Original blueprints showed it had been sealed off during a 1980s renovation. Someone had reopened it recently. The wood around the interior hinge showed fresh tool marks less than a year old, layered over decades-old wear. Someone had been moving through the walls of that house, unseen, for longer than anyone wanted to consider, and the access point ran directly beneath the room where Sam slept. Investigators traced the identity of the letter writer through handwriting analysis and a fingerprint lifted from the basement window well. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an obsessed neighbor. It was Constance Hale's daughter, a woman named Ruth, estranged from her mother for over a decade, who had never been listed on any deed, never mentioned in the sale paperwork, and who investigators later learned had been secretly returning to the house since childhood through that same crawl space, long before the Merrows ever arrived. Her mother had known. Her mother had let her. Ruth Hale was located 3 towns away, living alone. When confronted, she didn't deny the letters. She told investigators, calmly, that the house had always been hers to watch, that her mother had shown her the passage as a child, a way in and out no one else needed to know about, and that selling the house had never meant giving it up. She was charged with stalking and unlawful entry. She pled guilty. She served no prison time, a plea deal, mental health provisions, a restraining order instead. The Merrows moved out within the month. They sold the house at a loss to a buyer who was told everything, up front, in writing. Ruth Hale still lives 3 towns away from Weatherby Lane. Neighbors near her current address say she keeps her porch light on all night, every night. The same habit her mother kept for 30 years in the house she once called home. The crawl space was sealed permanently by the new owners, filled with concrete before they moved in. But during that renovation, contractors found something the case file never fully explained: a second, smaller opening branching off the main passage, leading toward the property next door. A house that had never been connected to the Hale family in any official record, and whose current owners, when asked, said they'd never noticed anything unusual in their own basement at all. No one has gone looking for where that second passage leads.